Hello and welcome from Greece. I'm welcoming today Esther Veltheim, and our topic is But Why? Hello, Esther. Welcome.
Hello, René.
It's a pleasure to have you here. I've been waiting for this moment a long time.
Oh, thank you.
Esther, I'd like to introduce you to my viewers first so they have an idea of who you are. Dear viewers, Esther is actually my Reiki teacher from Reiki 1. We just before the recording spoke about that. It was, I think, the year 1990 in Hong Kong. So I have a long and very close relationship with Esther. She is the creator of the BreakTthrough system, and she is co-founder of the International BodyTalk Association, IBA. She resides in Europe, Brexit permitting, that is, and currently I believe she is en route somewhere. And she teaches advanced interactive workshops in BreakTthrough. She also runs BreakTthrough instructor training programs. Esther is the author of Beyond Concept, the investigation of who you are not, and of the book, Who Am I? The Seeker's Guide to Nowhere. My connection with Esther, as I said, she is my Reiki teacher, and together with her husband, actually, John Veltheim, she and he have been our trainers, my wife's and my trainers, to become Reiki teachers in the early 90s. They are the founders of the Reiki Network, and in 1996, they co-wrote and published a milestone book, Reiki, Science, Metaphysics, and Philosophy. That's Esther. So this morning when I said to Misha, my wife, give me 3 words, quick, don't think, describing Esther, she said, multilingual, traveler, and a close friend.
Oh.
So welcome, Esther.
Thank you. That was very sweet. Thank you. Oh,
Did I do all right with the introduction, or would you like to add something?
No, that was already a lot.
Well, we have, of course, a very unusual title to our RTalk today, But Why? And of course, I think it was Esther's suggestion for the title, mind you. And of course, I think that why is the most stupid question in the world, because why doesn't answer how, and is not solution orientated. So we're going to explore a little bit why we have the title. That's obvious, but why? And maybe you want to expand on that a little bit, Esther. When we had our conversation a few days ago in preparation, what are we going to talk about? You said a lot of the work I'm doing today revolves around deconstructive thinking. And I said, okay, we can take that as a title. And you thought, no, you'd rather have, but why? So why do we have this title?
Well, I'll give you a long answer. A while ago, I heard a term describing the child's mind, and they used the term lantern mind. And the lantern mind, for me, was just such a wonderful description of how the child's mind functions. It immediately made me think of when I was living in Bavaria, with my little friend Mala. And once a year, they have a lantern festival. And we would wait till nightfall, and all the children and families would go down to the little square in the village, with their homemade lanterns. And in this big pool of light, we'd walk around the village singing lantern songs and along the riverside. And that immediately, that image came to me. And then the other image she uses is for the adult's mind, which is the spotlight mind, where we're more, narrow-minded. We're more focused in, just everything around us is isolated. We focus in a much narrower way. And so I thought that's a really good way of describing, I think, the work that I do, my focus. That's so how does that happen? Forgetting any scientific reasons, how does that happen that we go from lantern mind, where we have this great peripheral taking everything in, to this narrow? What happens to us? And also the way children ask questions. So children ask questions from the lantern mind, from a place that's that doesn't have a lot of answers already. Everything's fresh, and they're curious, and they, particularly adults, will say things, and then a child will respond, "But why?"
Oh, don't remind me, please.
I know. So we're like, shut up. And so it can be a lot, but still a child really truly wants to understand. Yes. So they have, whereas we have so many understandings, and like we go on Google and with an understanding we already have, we will ask why and how. Yeah. So we're not ever really asking clear, undiluted questions. We're always starting from a place of, I know something, and then how and why. And then we have that, what you call it on the internet, that how it's filtered according to our prejudices.
The algorithms would then filter out our preferences and will feed us exactly the information our craving ego probably needs, or whatever the driving engine, subconscious mind, whatever it is. But I still see a validity in questioning the value of the question why, because it invites somewhat to an analytical kind of looking at things. And I found also in my daily work, I find that this very often is confusing people more than anything. And mostly it doesn't help them to get on with their lives and find solutions which makes their life more comfortable, which makes them more happy. So the question why in itself, I tell me a little bit about deconstructive thinking. What do you mean by that? And I know that your work revolves around, or maybe more precisely, has the aim of creating breakthrough moments for individuals where they have like a mind opening away from this narrow-minded focus and seeing beyond the filters and the blinkers and the limitations which we all have given by society, by growing up, by many influences where we have inherited and been programmed with the mindset which we have. So breakthrough is obviously a goal, or a very important. Talk to me about breakthrough in relationship to why do we need to ask the question why to get through to a breakthrough?
So, well, we all have much more in common than we do differences. Although it would appear when we look out there as if differences are just, huge and eclipse everything else. But what we all have in common is that there's an expression in For the addiction is the only prison where the locks are on the inside. And it seems to me from really as tiny children, we received this hand-me-down legacy of how to live life. So this is really important part of growing up, that we need to learn certain parameters and certain ways of being. But the majority of these are really black and white, and they've been handed down and become more and more rigid over time. So whether they're religious, political, personal, it's an accumulation of all of those, and we hand it down, and our mind then we start to take them in. So I remember watching, I've never had children, but watching my little friend as she went from 2, 2.5 to 3, and seeing the shift just happening in her eyes. And as she began to, but terrible to say, but to be programmed, as it were. Yes, so there was and then more concerned about what people were thinking, and you saw things changing. And the spontaneity wasn't the same, although she was still really small. And so I looked at, so basically BreakTthrough, we focus on what is it that makes life appears such a struggle. So you look at little children, I think in India, watching little children on the garbage heaps, trying to protect their little siblings from rats, and yet they're making it a game and they're playing, and somehow or other they're still in the very worst of circumstances. A child still has that magical realm it inhabits. Huh? And then adults will say, well, yes, but then we have responsibilities. And this is part of the programming, yes? So there's an idea about this is what needs to happen, this is what will happen, this is how it should happen. And so we start to live from these recipes for living, these really rigid expectations. We have expectations for ourselves, expectations for others, expectations of life. And they are all our shoulds and shouldn'ts and cannots, and they are huge, huge lists. And it might seem oversimplifying, but they're the mother of all our defenses, because we've learned this is how I should be. So they alienate us from what's natural to us. And oftentimes what we're taught is right and what we're taught is wrong contradicts our nature, what comes naturally to us. And so we live a life where being ourselves becomes a liability. And much of the time we are mistaking expectations for goals and dreams and something positive. And when I work with people and work with looking at exploring their expectations, usually there's a whole list of reasons why those expectations are very valid and why they need them. And they all boil down to keeps me safe. So they're black and white thinking, and yet the idea is keeps me safe.
But let me interrupt you. If you change that, then people are unsafe. Then they feel, or they're afraid of, I don't know, that they're vulnerable, that they're losing their earthing, that they're losing their grounding, the safety net of their environment. Isn't that true?
Well, that's what we're told is the safety net, yes, the familiar. So I was thinking the other day, The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle's book, is so popular. I think I would entitle my book The Power of Ambiguity. You can imagine how few people would buy that. But really, so all our expectations are geared against the unexpected, against the unknown, yes, against ambiguity, which are actually all the key, against change, unless I'm controlling the change, unless it leaks the way. And so these are all what do these represent? Change, ambiguity, the unexpected. What do they all represent? They're life, no? So all our expectations guard against life. So what breakthrough, I mean, the focus is not just to give people just ahas. It's not to get rid of anything. It's not to change anything. And that's the problem. So we decide, well, then I'm going to make a list of power of positive thinking to superimpose on top of these rules. But that's just another list of expectations. Yeah. So no, all we need to do is to see what's there. What is it that's fueling the fear? What does it look like? And when we explore it in breakthrough, you get to see for every seeming positive conviction, there's one that contradicts it. And so the mind is full of contradictions.
Give me an example, please.
Now I'm trying to think of one. First one that comes to mind is, so people should be polite.
Yes.
The simple one.
Where do we get if people are impolite? We have war and struggles all the time. They must be polite.
So it should be like this. And the progression of thinking is until it is. So why do you need it to be that way? Yes. Yeah. Because when people are impolite, I feel bad. So it comes down that so people make me feel bad when they're rude. Yeah? So you should be polite. Basically, what they're saying is until your behavior changes, I can't feel better. Yes. So
I'm naming the conditions of your behavior at the same time. You have to follow those rules so I feel comfortable and safe with you.
So in other words, you need to limit yourself. You need to change yourself before I can change, before I can feel better. And of course, there's the huge part of that is you make me feel. So all the time saying responsibility is in your hands, in somebody else's hands for my feelings. So in breakthroughs, one explanation I give an analogy. So we all live from these expectations, which are basically overreactions to life. Yeah, they're defending against life. So you think if you went to your doctor, and let's say you have national health, everything is paid for, and you're just going for a regular checkup, and he says, "Oh, I don't know, René. No, you're looking a bit something strange. I really feel I need to do a whole bunch of tests, but I feel fine. Well, just to put my mind at rest, just let me do that. So he does all tests known to man, EEGs, MRIs, P tests, blood tests, and you're thinking, my goodness, but you have time. It's on national health. So he says, so now in a few days, when the test results come back, I'll phone you. So you're not worried, you feel fine. So then the phone call comes and he says, well, René, the results came in and I think you should come into my clinic for me to talk to you about it. So now you're getting a little worried. So you go in and he says, well, René, the test that I could redo, I redid. And I've gone over and over and over everything. But all the tests confirm the same thing. And look, I know that you think you're a man, but actually, all these tests show that actually you're a bunny rabbit. So now what would you do in such a situation?
If the result was that he would say, I'm a bunny rabbit, I'd probably laugh at him and say, it was nice knowing you, and leave him.
Right. I mean, every now and then someone says, I'd sue him. Then they really need breakthrough. No. So, right. So why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you stand up and try to prove that you're a man? Why wouldn't you do that?
Good question. Because I'd feel the cause of what he has given me is so ridiculously stupid that I'm not going to buy into the stupidity of that. And in a way, what I'm answering to you is, I feel superior to this stupidity, and I would take the high road and leave him.
But simple answer, why wouldn't you go? And simple answer, he says you're a bunny rabbit. Why would you really not care?
Because I don't take him serious.
Well, isn't it because you know you're a man?
Oh, I forgot that. Yes, you're right. I feel pretty confident in my masculinity. Yes, now that you mention it.
Now that I mention it. Yeah. So that's it. So it's an analogy, but it's a simple example. So when we know something, whether philosophically speaking, it might be something different, but when you know something, you don't feel a need to prove it. Yes. So then when you need to prove something, I mean, in a, reactionary way, what is that saying?
Maybe I'll tell you a real story, because I thought...
Answer the question first.
Okay.
Just keep simple on track. Sorry to interrupt you, but keep on track.
No, go ahead. Ask again, please.
So, why do you not feel the need to prove something you know that you're confident in?
For that reason, because I feel comfortable. I feel relaxed.
Relaxed. So why would you feel the need to prove otherwise?
Oh, if what I was confronted with would violate that which I know for sure and feel confident about, if that was threatened, then I would go into a defensive or into some mode or the other, into a reactive kind of mode.
So, need to prove, wherever there's a need to prove, it's an indication, it's proof that there is doubt.
Yes.
Right.
Insecurity, doubt.
Yeah. So an overreaction is always accompanied by a need to prove, whether it's a should that I'm saying to myself or a should that I'm saying out there. So overreaction is always need to prove, which is always proof of doubt, which means I'm lying to myself and I'm lying to you. Yes. And all expectations are overreactions. And you think how many expectations the human being has, no matter who they are, about every little thing that has to do with life and themselves, yes? And all those expectations are rigid black and white shoulds. And they all the time are things we are trying to prove, which tells you we live pretty much all the time from a place of overreaction, which is a place of defense. And then we decide, well, now I'm going on a spiritual path. And we sit down to meditate with our expectations. And we do our yoga with our expectations.
Nothing will ever change.
Right. So this is the point of deconstructive work, is that rather than trying to cause something else to happen, something to change, with the goal that it's going to look like this, we look at the beliefs that are triggering all of that. It's like, so come back to, so this is how it should be. So the question is, and if it was, so then it's a series of questions that we ask that get you to, that put those shoulds into perspective. And the whole focus of the work is simply to show what is stored in the myelin sheath. In the nerves have like a sheath around them, and all the programming is held in that myelin sheath. So this is why when we have a realization, there's a feeling, and we often feel a streaming happening because what's in the myelin sheath just needs to be acknowledged. We don't have to get rid of it because it's not true. Yeah, we just have to see what is it that's impacting on us. That seeing, that understanding, and the compassion that comes with it, it does all the work. So it's a very it's totally anti-conditioning, really. Yeah.
I followed you. Let me ask something, because you used the word expectation quite liberally, and the way you spoke, it had a connotation that it was pregnant with a charge of some sort of the other. But for most people, and in the business world, for example, the year-end budget is expected. A woman who is expecting, so the word expectation is not always, and I don't want to go into the linguistics. I'm trying to understand and explore what you have said. But the word expectation, the way you used it, was in a way negatively connotated, whereas there are good ideals. There are certainly, I think everybody would agree that "thou shalt not kill" is a pretty sensible guideline, a good goal to follow, and it's not automatically an expectation. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, unless a tiger is jumping at you.
Yes, but that's where the difference is between. I'm a convinced pacifist. I was on a walk this morning, and we spoke about that in a different context. I find that very often, particularly men in their masculinity today, they deny themselves access to their potential of aggressiveness because it's politically incorrect, because it's also not what they and what I want to do. I don't want to kill a tiger. I don't want to kill another person. But I'd like to have still access that if that happens, which you just described, if my life was under direct threat, and if the life of those I'm responsible for, then I would like to have at least access to the potential of my aggression, and not have that access closed for political correctness reasons. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. So we'd like to have those expectations until we don't want them. So what I'm saying is that all expectations are detrimental to us because they're global. When we have a should, it's global. And it impacts on us even when we think, no, I no longer believe that. It's still impacting on us. And it's different, anticipation. There's an excitement. There's anything's possible. An expectation is, it's one thing to have a healthy goal. And a healthy goal would be when it doesn't manifest, then we look for another opportunity. Yes.
We find better solutions.
But in general, the expectations, so we talk about lowering and hiring our expectations, which is, yes, expectations are expectations. They're saying in the future, this is how I want it to be. And if it isn't, this is how I'm going to feel. So we already have a recipe for something that's never, ever going to happen, which is the future, being here now. So we look at life through these expectations. And we're doing exercises with the power of now, but through these expectations, because if I do all these, then I'll be spiritual, I'll be a better person. So it all boils down to these good and bad ideas that are also handed down. Yeah. So actually expectations, we have to be very careful. Most of them are detrimental. Anticipation, that's really different.
I'm with you. This morning, when I went onto the net to research a little bit, prepare myself, I'd like to show you a quote I found. I'll put it up on the screen. Bertrand Russell said, "I would never die for my beliefs because I might be wrong."
Bertrand Russell. He was
And
such a great influence on me when I was a teenager.
And isn't that also what you just said? The anticipation versus the expectation.
Yes.
And he uses different words, but the dynamics behind it is very very similar. With that sentence, I interpret it, he is cautioning against our convictions being the product of our experiences, and then we sort of project that experience as a given, as a law, almost into the future. And we say, therefore, the future will be X, Y, and Z because the past was like that. And therefore, we are completely locked in the self-fulfilling prophecy of that thinking. And that's what I take out of that sentence.
Yes. So wherever there's a rigid, this is how it is. Yeah, wherever there's a this is how it is about anything, we're locked in. Yeah, there's no possibility of anything else. We're blinded to alternatives. So that's the spotlight mind.
So, and that's where you work on with everything you do nowadays with BreakTthrough. Let me put the broader screen on, because there's a nice picture of Ramana Maharshi in the background there. And of course, a central figure in the Advaita philosophy, which I know is dear to you. Actually, let me surprise you with something, with a little surprise. Let me share something which I found, which you may or you may not know. Let's see whether I can get it up, because there is very little live footage. I have to play it.
Grew crowds of devotees on September the 1st to mark the completion of 50 years since Ramana first set foot on the sacred soil of this historic mountain shrine. From far and near, they flocked for darshan of the holy sage, who by the severest austerities and profound contemplation has attained spiritual wisdom and serenity unique in the country. Thousands draw comfort from his mere presence, for he neither preaches nor blames, setting at ease all who come to him by the essential goodness he radiates to all around. A good man in a troubled world.
And the word that stands out to me there is attained, and that's our problem. We think there's something else we have to get, and yet there's just too much here, just covering up what's natural to us. And I remember going to see my teacher, Ramesh Balskar, and it was monsoon season. He said, "Oh, this is my slack period." There was no one there, and for 9 days I visited him, even on a Sunday. And he sat there. He hadn't put his false teeth in. He sat there with his wife Shada, and he wanted to talk about his time in America, and she kept on slapping him on the knee and going, "That's not how it was." And all my time with him, what I came away with was, he's so human. He's so human. And the problem for most of us, because of all these expectations, is we go through the spiritual life thinking we will escape our humanness. We'll suddenly talk in a particular way. And to think of Nisargadatta, the chain smoking and looking at Ramana, a body all contorted, in a lot of pain, and that they were still deeply, profoundly human. But we're trying to throw away the baby with the bathwater, as Advaita would say.
It's an important point. I see that in spiritual circles very often, and actually it's something very often today. When I hiked, somebody said to me, how can it be that there are egos or dissonances in the Reiki community? You people, you should be above these quarrels. And of course, my answer was, says who? And the person looked at me and she said, well, actually, says I. And I said, well, precisely, that's what your projection is. That's what your expectation is. But I, for one, and the Reiki teachers I know, none of them ever has said that they are not human anymore, that they can levitate, and there's still this human aspect which you just addressed. Tell me, Esther, the Advaita philosophy and your work today, I assume that your work today is a conclusion or a natural evolution for you personally, stemming from that philosophical background. Would you agree with that? Would you expand on what I just said?
It was a profound influence on me, and I know we're limited for time. Really, breakthrough stemmed from my own desperation, trying to help myself and understand. Well, it happened. I had a neurotoxic poisoning, and suddenly I couldn't do my job. I couldn't earn money. I was with someone I barely knew who was supporting me. All the things, and most of all, I couldn't read anymore. My whole nervous system was damaged. And in one foul swoop, all my identities were ripped away. So it's like, who am I now? And then I thought of my uncle, my mother's brother, who was tetraplegic, paralyzed in much of couldn't talk, couldn't move. And he was just, to me, one of the greatest teachers. And I thought, well, I would never have thought of him as useless. Why am I thinking I'm useless? And it was shortly after that, I couldn't read much, but just a sentence from Ramana Maharshi. And it just made sense to me. It was like, oh, so I'm not this, and I'm not that, and I'm not. So breakthrough is really exploring what is not, So it's taking, it's deconstructing. It's taking away all that stuff that we say, this is how I should be. This is how I am. I know myself. To just, and more what is the experience is, there's still overreactions. But there's not that, we're not the slave to the mind. The mind starts serving us. So it's a system that works to refine the way we use the mind so that it will do the job it wants to do, which is to serve us. Whereas for most of us, we're just enslaved to it. Mm-hmm. And everything we do is, even spiritual pathways are enslaved to the mind. Mm-hmm.
Esther, in the conversation, and that's the last thing, and then we will wrap up, but maybe you want to expand on, I did an RTalk some time ago with a Feldenkrais teacher, with Wendy Kahn, and in our conversation last time, you expressed parallels or compatibility of your work with breakthrough and the Feldenkrais, Moshe Feldenkrais's approach to healing to life. Explain to me a little bit, and with an emphasis that people who have an idea about Feldenkrais would get further insight in your breakthrough work.
My first experience of Feldenkrais was about 25 something years ago. And at the end of it, I thought, oh, this is the physical version of breakthrough. I was so excited. And I went to the teacher. I said, I do something. I didn't explain anything, but this is like the physical version of it. And she turned to me, she said, oh, we should teach together. She's been a very good friend ever since. So yes, Feldenkrais, brilliant. Because to me, Feldenkrais very much works with the nervous system. And it's always questioning. So we'll do a movement and then say, so how about trying it this way? How about trying it that way? And suddenly you discover something that you thought you were incapable of doing a moment ago. You're moving, but from the whole body and from a place of space. Well, clearly the space was always there. So, but we were unaware of it. So it's the same. Very briefly put, but it's the same with BreakTthrough. You're discovering a spaciousness in the way of being, in the way the mind functions, rather than just all this clutter and this rigidity, which is so reflected in the human body. So as we get older, we're constantly rigidifying, directly reflected in the way our minds are so rigid. So our expectations are held in the myelin sheath, reflected throughout the body, and we can only respond in very rigid ways. So we begin more and more to move in isolations. We begin more and more to think in an isolated way.
And so, move physically also. It's
yes.
not just psychologically, mentally,
socially. We don't use our full capacity. So it's the same, we don't use our mind fully. We're in one little corner imprisoned there. That's not the whole mind. And the mind's not the enemy. And there's nothing to get rid of in it. That it's see how it functions. It's the same as there's nothing bad with the body. But pay attention to how it's functioning. Is there another way? So this would be really BreakTthrough is there has to be another way. That was how it began. And to me, Feldenkrais is the same. There has to be another way. Feldenkrais, brilliant work. Just, I think the two should always be done together. I don't think we can really work on the mind well without doing Feldenkrais.
And this is, I think, a very important conclusion. And we're getting to the end because listening to you about BreakTthrough and about some of the things you explained, it was using the mind, and that's fine. It's a great tool, but it's only a tool, and we are more than just mind and emotions. We are actually also a physical being, and like what you said towards the end now, that those two components, and there are a few others more, in combination with each other are very valuable. And I think it would be a pity if anyone is claiming that one is the only system or the only method to attain a goal, which the goal being more liberty, more happiness, more open mind.
Or to lose interest in goals.
And eventually the letting go of goals in the traditional
sense. Losing interest, but we can't let go. So the losing interest can only just happen. And the mind is a really important tool. It's part of Feldenkrais mind body. And we're using the mind to make a healthier mind. Basically, is Jnana Yoga, yes.
Thank you very much, Esther. Is there one more thing you would like our viewers to leave with? Your final parting message?
No, I can't think of anything. Just, yes, to be gentle with ourselves, not to take life so seriously, and to understand that we are all, it doesn't matter whether we're a dictator or who we are, that we all, have the same pains, the same hurts, the same struggles deep down. So,
and all, with all, you mean every human being?
every human being. Yeah. So this is the for me, the key in breakthrough. You come away, there's a compassion that happens for yourself, for others. That compassion, that does all the work. There's nothing you need to do. The compassion does the work. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and for all the people, for everybody, very often, of course, there is a but following. And I think your work is focusing much on getting rid of the but and accepting everybody, full stop, not the comma, but full stop, everybody, and we mean everybody.
No, it's just acknowledging the buts, not getting rid of them or accepting them, just seeing them.
Okay.
Seeing them for what they are. No, not true.
Excellent, Esther. Thank you very much. I say goodbye to you for now, and we'll be in touch. Dear viewers, bye-bye, Esther.
Thank you, René.
Dear viewers, thank you for viewing. Please do subscribe. You will see where in a moment. And I hope you're looking forward to the next edition of RTalk in 3 weeks' time.